Hey, it's Jordan and Demi. I'm here with the incredible, the legendary Kate Pierson of B-52's. You've inspired people, and I really appreciate your red hair. Is do you
Thank
go
you.
through different colors, or has the red been constant for a while?
Oh, red is always red. I'll be red till I'm dead. I'm just never going, any other way. I'm tempted, I've ever people have told me, "Oh, if you have black hair, we used to wear wigs. The B-52s were big on wigs. So I've
Right.
had blonde wigs and black wigs and purple wigs and orange wigs and we used to do all those pink wigs and everything before like it became really the thing. But I'm sticking with my own red hair.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. Good call. Good call.
Except for
Um,
videos and Halloween when I wear a black wig.
Yeah. By the way, you released this solo album last year, and you have a Halloween song, and I love it. I don't
Yes.
think there's enough Halloween songs out there. I think it's an untapped market.
I know. I definitely think there should be more Halloween songs. It's a big holiday. People celebrate it just as much as Easter.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was a kid, I remember on Halloween you'd hear the radio DJ say that they were about to play the
Mm.
Monster Mash, and I'd run in the
Oh
house
yeah,
and turn on the
yeah,
stereo so I could hear them play Monster Mash. So.
yeah. That was
Um,
always the classic Halloween song.
we'll get into the all the BV2 stuff in a second, but I want to concentrate on your
Right.
solo stuff first. Um, I love your solo stuff. It's so complex. You worked with Sia. You've really put a lot of effort into your solo music. So where does it? Are you constantly working on solo music, or is it just kind of a once a decade kind of thing, or what place does that have in your life?
I mean, lately I've been just songs are going through my head, and I'm writing a Christmas album just because I came up with one Christmas song and then I had another song I thought that could be a Christmas song if I just change a few words. And now I'm writing, so many Christmas songs. I have one called Snowy Day and I have one about elves. So that's a sort of a soundtrack when I'm working on a song. It just plays and plays in my head. And I recently sang a Sia song that she did with um, L7, and it's called Somersault. And I sang it at a friend's wedding. And I could not stop that from playing in my head, just like at night. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night and realize that was still going on in my head. So, but I've been writing a lot of solo songs. Most of the songs I've written for my two solo albums, Guitars and Microphones and Radios and Rainbows, have been collaborative. Mostly with someone who did the instrumentation. I would do the melody and lyrics, and sometimes so the collaborator would have some lyrical ideas, but mostly I would do all that. And this time I'm just writing the whole thing is coming to me, chords and the melodies and everything. So it's interesting. Songwriting can go any way. You can write a song in so many different ways, but now they're just sort of bombarding me. Not just the
What
Christmas songs, but other
That's good
songs
though.
I'm writing.
That's
Oh,
good.
it's great. Yeah, the doors of imagination have opened.
Your production is really complex. This isn't you with the guitar, bass, and drums singing songs. Like there's all sorts of like keys and hidden vocal harmonies and stuff like that. Are you a studio junkie? Are you like? Is it hard for you to put a mix to bed?
Oh yeah. I
Mm.
well, it used to be very, back in the day when the B-52 started, they spliced the tape and they didn't really have faders that were automated. So everything, if there was a mix that someone didn't like the mix, I'll put my vocal up a little more, guitar. They had to completely start from scratch and just pull all the faders back. I don't know if, people know what faders are, but it's just all the volume levels that you use in a mix in a studio, and it was just torture. But now it's so much easier with digital and Pro Tools, so it's a lot better now. But I do love recording. I love being in the studio. I love layering vocals and harmonies. That's like woo. That gives me the chills when I can do that. And with the B-52's, just Cindy and I get these natural harmonies going And I can do that with myself too, but it is fun when I hit that with Cindy when we jam and write songs with the B-52's. But I kind of use the same jamming method, just letting the flow go, just kind of listening, just letting things uncensored come forth.
Do you sometimes miss the band to lean on, or uh, do you view it as sort of like an outlet?
Well, I just find it so much easier that when the B-52's write together, there's a lot of opinions. And so when I write with one other person, it's like, wow, this is so much, you have a designated kind of thing that you do. I could do the melodies I mean, I'm open to any suggestions too, but
Mm.
I love to do the lyrics. That's one of my favorite things is coming up with lyrics and harmonies and melodies. And it's a lot simpler when it's just, and now that I'm writing some songs just in my head, by myself, it's then I kind of miss feedback. It's like, am I writing? Is this song like too off kilter? Not in the sense that I feel like it's not harmonically or beautiful song, but maybe it's just out there a little. But that's my thing. I love the unexpected and original.
Are you mentioned, you're on an iPad. You mentioned all the different tools. Are you a tech person? Have you always kind of embraced tech?
Well, I have embraced tech. I mean, I'm on, I'm trying my best to post social media. I love TikTok. Actually, I really love TikTok. I don't post on it enough, but, I'm still learning though a lot about technology. And when it comes to wiring things and just like setting up microphones, no, I am not a tech person in
Mm.
that sense. I tried to learn Logic, uh, the recording program Logic, and I did, I learned it. I knew I could get a grasp on it, but I'm just not interested. I just would rather have. I work with my friend John Valesio, local engineer, and it's just so much easier. I love working with the band when I record. Uh, I guess I'm sort of old school that way, but I just can't be bothered to, try to spend hours in front of a computer. I just want to I just want to play.
Right, right. Um, when I was thinking about the B-52's history and lore and what I really wanted to ask and get, I'm a big storytelling person, and the one thing that came to my mind is, what do you remember about the first time you met Fred? Where were you, and what was your impression, and how did you guys actually meet?
Well, I was in Athens, Georgia, and I wound up there. A long story. The hand of fate led me to Athens, Georgia. But I was living out in the country in this. I mean, it really was like the Love Shack. This house was a tenant farmer's house, and it had a tin roof that was rusted, and it was in the middle of a field. And I had goats, and I only knew my neighbors out there, some farmers, and my landlady, Eloise Maxwell. And I had to get a job. So I got a job in Athens, kind of a student job doing audio visual for conferences. That's ironic since I'm not a really big tech person, but I had to run, slideshows and stuff for science conferences and stuff. And I met my friend Robert Waldrop, who has also written a bunch of lyrics for the B-52's. And he's one of the first people I met. And we went to a party and a big thing, and I used to ride my bicycle 5 miles from my house, my love shack, into town. And we went to this party in Athens. The whole thing was crashing parties, going to parties, free beer, but dancing. We loved, everyone loved to dance in Athens. So, and it was kind of a lot of fraternities and the university, and then the art students, which kind of our group was part of that whole kind of artsy crazy art student group. So there was Fred, and my friend said, "Look at that guy. He's got the best collection of Hawaiian shirts of anyone I have ever met." And there was Fred dancing in a really loud Hawaiian shirt, and I started dancing with him, and we just really hit it off. And I met everyone in the band in different ways. I met Cindy at Halloween. Fred and I then met Cindy at the same time on Halloween, and I was wearing a mask, and I had really long hair, and my hair was draped over these wings of a mask I made. And Then I met Keith when he was playing drums for another band called the Zambo Flirts. He was just filling in. Um, so I met everyone in kind of different ways. And then I met Ricky when he was with Keith. So I never met them all together, but we all hung out with a larger group of friends. And just one night, magical night, we were just the five of us, actually six of us together with our friend Owen. We had a flaming volcano at this Chinese restaurant called Hunan's, and we couldn't afford food, so we got this drink, flaming drink, and we just started to jam at Owen Scott's house. He had all these instruments in the basement, and he went upstairs to write a paper. He became a clinical psychologist, and the rest of us formed the B-52's.
Wow.
And so it
Wow.
happened by just
Well,
sort of like the flaming volcano. It just sort of happened. We started jamming, and then it was like, wow, I guess we're a band.
yeah, yeah. And one thing that hasn't seemed to come up with throughout your history is, has there ever been a rivalry with you and Cindy on who was singing lead or anything? Was that any issue at
Well,
all?
I guess it's always an issue in a band. There's always a, especially since we write collectively. But it also gives energy because, we're all fighting for our parts. And when we jam, we record everything and then listen. And even if it's something way in the background, you might hear some great harmony, and let's put that in there. And I think that's why a lot of our songs become sort of a bunch of different parts in a lot of our early songs without maybe even a chorus. There's just a lot of, or each verse is different. Everything's different each time because it's all these collaging the parts. So I guess everyone's always fighting for not just Cindy and I, but three vocalists. You got to be like, okay, I want my part in there, but it all works out. I mean, we still get along and love each other and hang out. So something really was magic about it.
I know that your performances in Athens are legendary. Do you remember the first time that you performed Rock Lobster and what the how it evolved into the spectacle?
Well, the very, very first performance, it was very rudimentary, but we played at this house. It was just a house party, and we invited our friends, and we had to borrow equipment. And the equipment was, speakers. I think we just had like, stereo speakers, borrowed somebody's stereo speakers, and they were on the bookshelves. And when we were playing, they literally fell off the shelves. People had to hold them onto the shelves, and our friends started dancing, and we wore, stylized. We put like hung these dolls from the ceiling, and we wore black. And Cindy and I had these big white afro wigs that were actually fake fur pocketbooks turned upside down. And anyway, it was really fun, and we knew we had something because our friends danced. Our friends really danced, and there's some really fun photographs that a friend of ours took, mostly of other people dancing, not even of us. But it was just we knew there was some kind of real uh, synergy happening because everyone was dancing.
So there are photographs of the first performance, but they're not of the band. They're mostly of people at the
There's a
party.
couple of the band, yeah. There's a few, but there's also a
Okay.
few of people dancing. So
Y- Yeah, yeah. Now, you guys had such an interesting time to come out in the late 70s. It was such like a weird era for like no one really knew what direction like disco was dying and you had, so when you guys were going for a record deal, you didn't have all these indie imprints like you do now.
right,
And because the band was really hard to fit into a category, nowadays we'd say indie alternative whatever, but
yeah.
what was it like to try to get a record deal and
Uh,
try to sell the B-52's, in 1978 or 79?
well, I guess it was sort of a. I mean, we never had that expectation when we started of, we're going to get signed and we're going to rule the world. I mean, we just wanted to amuse ourselves and have fun. And I think Ricky was the one with the most drive. He had a 5-year plan. He never really revealed
Mm.
what that plan was, but anyway, we just sort of kept going to New York at a suggestion. There was nothing happening, by the way, in Athens except house parties and bands maybe playing in in house parties, but there was no new wave scene or punk scene. It was still, kind of like I'm a rambling man kind of thing still happening.
Right.
um, so there was nothing really. And at Athens, aside from the university, which was very separate from the town, there were no clubs or bars, or it was just not happening. It was a farmer's hardware, a feed store, and a seed store. It was really farmer oriented. So there wasn't a whole lot. So we went to New York and played, and then we came back to Athens and wrote a few more songs, went back to New York, started playing CBGB's and Max's Kansas City and Hurrahs and the Mud Club. And we just and built up an audience. And during that whole scene that was happening in New York, the punk new wave scene, people would go see other bands. Talking Heads would come see us. We'd see Blondie and Patti Smith and the Television and just Talking Heads, and everyone would sort of cross pollinate. And we were very excited about. It was a really kind of small scene, but of course the record labels were very interested because there was really something happening, something really amazing happening, and it was happening in L.A. too, and other in Akron, Ohio, and all over. This kind of thing was happening, and they were really paying attention. So I mean, all the major labels started becoming interested in us. Island Records, Sire, Seymour Stein from Sire really wanted to sign us. And they all came, a couple of them came to Athens to visit us and to woo us. And all we could think about was, oh, free dinner. They're going to take us out to dinner. I mean, we weren't really knowing, we didn't know what to do. So it was really good that we didn't know what to do because we just waited. We didn't sign something, right away, something foolish, because there was a couple of offers that were like, we just didn't know what to do. So Tina and Chris from Talking Heads introduced us to their manager, and he became our manager and signed us to Warner Brothers and Island Records, which was a real coup because Chris Blackwell from Island Records also produced our first record in the Bahamas, and that was just amazing.
One thing that's always fascinated me is bands that have sort of like an indie alternative underground period and then a top 40
Yeah.
pop band period, which you guys have definitely had both of those. Um, I know that the band was kind of in the wilderness a little bit in the mid 80s. What was the thing that pushed you to go for this glossy pop record that was Cosmic Thing? Like, was it a conscious we need a hit kind of thing, or was it? Tell me about how that kind of momentum shifted in that direction.
Well, speaking of shift, we had such a major shift. Our, band member and best friend and, Cindy's brother and Ricky passed away. Ricky Wilson passed away in 1985. And after that, it seemed like we might not continue. We had done a few records with moderate success. Our second record was also, a lot of it was written when we did the first record. So, a lot of the tunes were already written. So we had kind of a good momentum for the second record. And then writing the third and fourth, and, I think we got great. I mean, we were really good and solid. But when Ricky died, it just stopped with a screeching halt, and we just were grieving. And it took a few years to just come out of the dark. And I moved up to Woodstock. Keith Strickland moved to Woodstock, and then I followed. And I lived across the pond from Keith, and I would row my canoe over there to the dock, and he played me some music he was working on. This was like a year at least, or two after Ricky died. And we started thinking about, he played the music for the rest of the band members, and everyone was excited. And Fred and Cindy and I were just loving what Keith had written. So Keith really wrote all the instrumentation and switched to guitar, which he already played. He did a lot of work with Ricky. He played a lot of guitar when Ricky and he were developing the music, for the other albums. So, and those were more, that was a lot more loose. But Keith, in this case, he really wrote the tracks for Cosmic Thing. And he sometimes thought maybe what would be the chorus would be the verse. I mean, we'd switch it up, and he didn't have that set an idea, but it was still much more of a song format the way he wrote the tracks. Whereas the stuff that he and Ricky wrote and we jammed on was a little more loose, and things were just push. I mean, as I said, things were kind of collaged together. So I think that's what really pushed us into this pop kind of feeling. And no, we never said this is going to be a hit. In fact, we made a declaration that this was for us and this was not to be a hit, and this was not, we're going to not try to be, come back or anything. This was just to heal from Ricky's death. And it really was, I think the impetus to get together was that it was precious what we had together, and it was healing from Ricky's death. It was really a healing process. And there's nothing more healing than doing music together, that can bond you and you know
Yeah, and I'm sure at one point it shifted from being sort of like, what do we do now, to almost like a celebration of Ricky
yeah,
once you kind of, you know,
yeah.
got everything put together.
And it wasn't conscious. As always, we jammed, but we were in a more of a studio setting when we were jamming. So we had an engineer and Pro Tools, so we could put the songs together much more easily. But we also still had that kind of spontaneous jamming, and songs like Deadbeat Club. I do remember jamming on that, and the first kind of take had almost the whole like content of the song in it, just because it just kind of flowed. It was a story, and it was really about our time, in Athens when we were just playing around and hanging out together.
And I think that's so cool that you guys have that time together still, that the people, you and Cindy and Fred, like there's still like that sort of like do you remember when, you guys have this
Yeah.
memories together. I'm a real nostalgic person, as you can tell. So
Well, I
anyway,
guess we are too, because once we get together, sometimes, we'll talk about, old times or stories. And Fred keeps, we have a thread, a band thread. It's the larger band, and also a big change with Cosmic Thing was getting the bigger band, kind of like when Talking Heads got their big band. We got
right.
musicians who have been Tracy Wormworth and Sterling Campbell, and they've been with us for years since Cosmic Thing. And Ken Murray now plays the keyboard and guitar, but it's a family. We have a family dynamic, and we really enjoy hanging out together. And we have a big thread going. And Fred's, well, he's always starting new threads too. He's like not Mr. Technology, so he's always starting a new thread, and different people are on it. But he's always sending like silly, reels and stuff.
That's good. I love that you guys have that kind of like family text chain thing going on.
Yeah, it's a constant thing.
I know you probably heard this one before, but was the Love Shack a real place? Was it based on a real place?
Well, it wasn't. It was based. Well, in a way, it was. It was based on this place called the Hawaii. It's a mythical course, but it's based on this place called the Hawaiian Hali. And I recently found out a lot about it through my friend Calvin Smith, who lives in Athens still. I mean, no, he lives in Eugene, Oregon, but he's from Athens. And his parents used to go there, and he had these great pictures. And it was a club that was basically African American. These guys started it, but they wanted it to be a mixed race club, which was really unusual for Athens because it's very, very segregated when I moved down there still. And even the university didn't have a lot of black students, and it was very, separated. So they really wanted, and it did work for a while. And I don't know how long the club was open, but it's kind of like that idea that it's everyone's included, and it's out in the country. And my house was really, I really wrote those lines, set way back in the middle of a field, funky old shack. That was really the house I lived in. And I had an outhouse with a view of the cow field. And it really was like it had a tin roof, rusted.
Wow, wow. So the origins of the song, was it something that kind of came together organically, or did someone say, "Hey, I have this song, let's play it," like something out of a movie? Like where did the actual song come from?
Well, that's never the case. I mean, we've never. I mean, Fred came up with a lot of great titles like Private Idaho. Um, and he came up with the idea, the title, Love Shack. But as always, we just jammed on it and had no fixed idea, like, let's write a song about the Hawaiian Hale, or,
Mm.
there was no discussion about what it's going to be, because the whole process of jamming, you just have to let whatever comes out. And how we got Tin Roof Rusted, Keith had already pre-recorded the track, and so he was playing it, and it stopped suddenly, and we were still jamming, and Cindy and Fred and I had headphones, and Cindy just kept going, and she said, "Tin Roof Rusted," and so we said we have
Mm.
to keep it just like that. The music stops, and she does that. So that was came out of a jam, because I don't think you could even sit down and write that, like, hey, let's do this.
Right, right. And I remember when I was a kid, and my mom had the cassette tape, Cosmic thing, and I remember I'd be like, what's she saying? What
Yeah.
I can't hear
Well,
it."
that's
Yeah.
another thing. People couldn't really understand what she said. So there are all sorts of, which was really great, because there was a lot of speculation about what she was saying, and, just
Yeah,
mystery
yeah, yeah.
about it.
If this was back in the 70s, you created some real, like, secret, what's going on, some kind of rumor or
Yeah.
something. But and the music video is legendary, one of the most famous music videos at MTV,
Yeah.
where the actual making of it in the shack that was the Love Shack in the video, was it as much fun as it looked like, or was it just like a sweaty, you sort of stressful mess?
Well, we did it at our friend's house, and the director of the video wanted to do it in the studio in New York City, because at this time we had moved from Athens, and lived pretty much all either up here in Woodstock or in New York City. And our friend said, we have friends that live in the literal Love Shack. It has to be done there. And we convinced and I hadn't even seen it, but we convinced the director to come look at it. And once we saw it, it was like, oh my God, they've got goats, and it was Philip Memory and Scott Walker, and they had goats in the checkerboard roof. It was really their house, and they're potters, so make amazing, amazing pottery and tiles. So they had all this colorful tile, and it just really was it. So RuPaul was there, and really got the dance line started. It started out kind of like, okay, it's hot and we're getting ready, and it's a little bit like they didn't have any food. I remember kind of everyone was like, where's the food, where's the food? They had some donuts of flies flying around the donuts, but once we got into the groove, it actually became a party, and RuPaul really got the line dance going. It's like, okay, everyone line up, and
Mm.
so it became a dance party.
And was the car, was it actually someone's car? Did you rent the big as a whale
I guess
Chrysler?
the director got the car. I don't
Okay.
know whose car
I
it
was
was,
hoping for some
but
cool story, how it was like somebody's aunt's car or something like that. But okay, that's
No, I don't know where the car came from, but we were just riding down the road. People were local people, I guess, were like, "What are they doing here?" Because it was really out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know
yeah,
if a
yeah.
few
I'm
people
sure. I'm
saw us go
sure.
by, but the goats were real. I mean, Philip and Scott really. The
Yeah,
goat that
yeah.
appears in it was not a stage goat.
Right. Not a CGI goat.
Exactly. But even,
Yeah.
their pet goat. And they had two
Right.
goats. They named them Kate and Cindy, actually.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, and once you had this huge hit, and Rome was a big hit too, was it like, oh crap, we need to make follow-up hits, or did you even care? You were like, this is like a nice bonus.
I guess, we toured so much for Cosmic Thing. It was really a surprise to us that it was a hit. And we started playing clubs and then bigger places. And as it went up the charts, and Rome was a big hit as well as Love Shack, and it just started really spiraling upward. And we started playing bigger and bigger places. We toured for like a year and a half. And that's when Cindy decided she'd really been, felt burnt out and wanted to leave the band and start a family and leave on a high note. And so we did good stuff after that. Um, and I think we just sort of reached a point where we just started touring. And we started touring and touring. And after that, I mean, we could have done more records, but after that, and Cindy rejoined the band and we started touring so much. We didn't do another record till we did Funplex.
Yeah. Well, you did. I think it's so bizarre. How did you even get the Flintstones theme song? How did that come across your
Well, we did. Nile Rodgers was one of the producers of Cosmic Thing and Good Stuff, and so he was. Um, we had a song also in Earth Girls Are Easy, this movie called Earth Girls Are Easy, Cosmic Thing, but was in that movie. And then someone approached Nile, I guess, for us to be in the Flintstones, and we were we did the Twitch and the Flintstones theme. And at that point, Cindy wasn't in the band, so it was just really Fred and Keith and I, and it was so much fun that we got to go this incredible uh, staging that they did in an actual quarry outside of LA. And they had such detail, the signs and the little car. Fred and I got to drive one of those cars that our feet propelled. It was just a blast.
yeah.
And I shared a dressing room with Rosie O'Donnell. It was just a blast. She was really so nice and fun. It's kind of hard writing for a movie, or actually, Earth Girls Are Easy. They asked us to write this song about. Um, there was a scene anyway. It was very specific what they wanted us to write, and we did it. And then all of a sudden they said, "Oh well, someone else wrote it. You know, can you do another song?" And I think that's how TV is a lot of times, or movies. It's very much you have to kind of do what they want, and it's
Right.
it's
You're a hired gun. You're not
exactly, yeah,
yeah.
yes,
I'll let you go here in a second, but I always like to talk about the background, the home studio. You got to get a guitar or bass. I can't tell behind you.
yeah.
So what's your
It's guitar.
okay? Okay. So what's your home studio recording thing like? Do you, if you have an idea for a song, do you like run into a room and hit record, or what's your setup like there at home?
Well, I don't really. This is just a sort of makeshift studio, and I don't really work here that much. I have a little keyboard and guitar, but I have a studio down the road that's awesome. I mean, it's it's not a professional recording studio, but I have Logic and I have Pro Tools there, and I have an engineer I work with that lives down the road, and I have a great microphone, and it's really colorful, and it's got all sorts of memorabilia and crazy stuff around, and it's just feels so nice. I have a great piano there and all sorts of instruments and guitars and crazy keyboards. So I love being in that atmosphere to work. And I usually work writing when I've written stuff by myself. I just work it out on a piano or guitar. And usually I hear it in my head and then I'll just play it out on the piano. And sometimes I'll fiddle around on the piano and come up with things. That's another way that I write. It's not as easy on the guitar for me. Just my I would love in another life to be a great guitar player. That's something I've always wanted to do. My father was a guitar player. He played in a big band when he was young, and he always played guitar around the house. And I got pretty good. And my first solo record, I played guitar in the live gigs I did. But I just sort of focus more on singing. It's just, I guess I just have to, I can't, I guess I'll never be Jimi Hendrix. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
You
darn.
know?
Well, at least it's helpful enough to be proficient enough at instruments to be able to write a song. I think that's like really the main
Yeah,
thing, to be able to like work out some chords and stuff like
yeah.
that.
That I have a great piano, but that's the main. I'm not a great piano player. I just know how to work out the chords and in a way, it's interesting because Joni Mitchell said she doesn't read music, which is so amazing to me. But I do read music, but I don't rely on that. I really rely on my ear, and in a lot of ways, that's just for this kind of music. It's better to just sort of feel your way along melodically, I think. But for my
Yeah,
solo record, as I said, I worked with all these different great people. Chris Braid, and you were mentioning the instrumentation, because Chris Braid does a lot of. He's worked with Lana Del Rey and Sia and a lot of different artists, and he loves to layer. He loves to have strings and make it very lush. And then I work with Blue Macaulay doing Evil Love, who has much more kind of funky, old school kind of sound. So each person I worked with, Jimmy Harry, who worked with Madonna, um, uh, Take Me Back to the Party, he had a much different approach. So each person, I just so enjoyed working with different people and collaborating, and that was really the fun of it. But who knows what when my Christmas album comes out?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking I'm
I'm
getting all these ideas.
I'm just fascinated by what that would sound like and the possibility of special guests maybe coming in and
Oh
that kind
yeah.
of thing. So who knows? Who knows? Well, we'll look back in a year or two and see if anything comes out of it. Yeah, yeah.
I do have one a remix coming out of a song that I did with Tim Anderson called Pillow Queen, and I asked this other artist,
I love
Bright
Pillow
Light.
Queen. I was listening to the album this morning.
Oh,
I was
thank
like,
you.
that's such a cool sounding song.
Well, it's remixed by Bright Light. He's Bright Light, Bright Light, and I just saw him on Facebook and on Instagram, and I reached out to him. He did a remix, and we're doing a video, and we have some special guests in the video, so that's going to come out soon.
Awesome, awesome, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
talking
you.
to me. I love the music history. I love hearing how things are done and getting stories from people like you. So thank you so
I
much.
have a lot of stories, a lot more too.
I bet you do.
Thanks so
All
much. I
right.
really enjoyed your questions and talking to you.
Absolutely. All right.
All right. Bye.